Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, assalamu alaikum, peace be upon all of you. Everyone, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Please, if you're watching, respond to the salam in the chat. If you're watching after the live has finished, please respond to the salam in the comments. I hope everyone is doing well. Welcome to Parenting Skills Muslims Need Part 2. Before getting right into the lesson, some housekeeping things, questions, comments, likes, shares, and subscribes are all very welcome. Alhamdulillah, the algorithm it's been okay to me, I would say, since as long as I'm putting out content, I've been having a steady trickle up of subscribers and views. Sometimes you'll see on YouTube people put these things up in the beginning where they will show their statistics and they'll say, hey, most of you who are watching the video are not subscribed, so subscribe to it. That's actually not the case with my videos. My videos, 75-80% of the views do come from subscribers. Alhamdulillah, there's evidence that some of you are very devoted watchers, mashallah. The Parenting Course #1, which was a long video, and it's hard to get views up for long videos, but it's close to 900. I'm hoping to get it to 1,000. Of that, 250 people returned to view it from what it said. So alhamdulillah, people are going back to finish or going back to re-go over material. So those of you who are my devoted watchers, jazakumullah khairan, I love you for the sake of Allah. Thank you for being here. Do please share it with people because that is what will help this spread, especially if you're finding benefits. A lot of you have expressed that you feel this, as I do, that this is something that the Muslims need. So the only way people are going to get it is if you spread it. It really is a powerful thing. Just send someone a message. If you have social media, please repost it on your social media. Please say a benefit that you got from it. Please just express to them that you yourself are learning a lot, that you think it's something that people need, etc. All that is very, very helpful. Getting to the lesson, what two words were the most important overall thing to remember from session 1? If you're watching live, go ahead, try to put in the chat. But in lesson 1, we went over a lot of things. I'm going to review it very briefly shortly here and show you where I've put some resources on the internet. But I said in the last video last week that overall, if I could give parenting advice to people, teaching advice as well, advice on anyone interacting with kids in general, if I could isolate it into 2 words, what would those words be? Go ahead and put it in the chat. If you are caught up with me watching live, it is awkward to get responses from the chat live because there is about a 10-second delay or so, but go ahead and put it in the chat. I will even give you the first word, which is be, and the second word is calm. To be calm, and that was the big thing that we worked on last week, and we worked on we analyzed what goes wrong when kids trigger you, and we talked a little bit about how maybe in traditional societies where you have the village support in raising kids, you can operate on your stress reactions, you can operate on your triggered reactions, but in the world that we're raising our kids in today, we can't really afford to do that because there's so much competition for them. So we have to maintain our authority with them and their respect for us while also maintaining a very strong bond, love, and connection with us so they will accept what we want to teach them. And I really appreciate everyone who gave me feedback this week. I appreciate all the people who talked to me this week. And anyone it should be in the description box when the video is done. I'll show you we can also access this on my website too. But anyone is also free to schedule a meeting with me. There's no cost for it. It's not official coaching or counseling or consultation or anything like this, but it's an opportunity for us to talk. And I like talking to all of you, even if you're expressing to me the problems and issues you're going through. I like hearing about that. I want to hear about that. I appreciate connecting with the Muslims all over. And something, what I've learned in talking to many of you, many of us, we know the right things to say to our kids. We have a solid understanding of the reasonings and this types of things for why we want them to follow Islam and why they should believe in Islam. But a huge lesson to get out of all this learning is how we say things is just as important as what we say. As I said before, you will never get away from the fact that dealing with young people is an actions speak louder than words business, and how we approach them also even before we say something is just important as what we say. And that was what we talked about last week. Now, on my website, abrahameducation.com, if you go to Abraham Education /parents, I've added a new page there. I'm going to keep that kind of, collecting things that I go over here in the course. So last week I showed you these training videos where we talked about the breathing, how to breathe when a kid triggers you, and practicing staying relaxed and getting used to that. The facial expression, the importance of not speaking with a clenched jaw and with your teeth touching and grinding, and the technique that video goes over to teach you to prevent you from doing that. We also went over the very important body language of how you turn and approach kids, how you slow it down and how you slowly walk to them, and how that maintains so much authority with them versus an agitated, aggressive type of walk that we justify in our minds to do when we're triggered by the kids, and we think somehow they're just going to, feed off of our negative emotions and formulate it in their minds to get the lesson, and that just doesn't work. We just know that doesn't work. Also, too, what I did not go over last week, but an additional video on this link, and I'll put the link in the chat right now. Alaikum assalam. Thank you to the sister who answered the question correctly. The link is in the chat, abrahameducation.com /parents. I also have a video that shows how to rise from sitting, which is similar to the turn approach, but how do you do that slow? There is a way, depending on your strength, you might be able to do it better than others. It's something you can practice. But a lot of times we're sitting around the kids or whatever, and they start getting into something or whatever and doing something we don't like, and we have to redirect them. And as I talked about last week, physical proximity before the shouting. You don't want to use the shouting. It always works better. Sometimes a slow rise when you are sitting is the key thing you need, and you'll see the kids really react to that. And your homework for this, all of you who are following this, your homework is to practice these nonverbal body language communication things, and then practice them with your kids or practice them with kids around, and just try to notice subtleties in how they react. As a teacher, do this all the time. The really classic example with a teacher and how this stuff works is, you teach a lesson and you have the kids doing their independent work, and you circulate the classroom, or maybe you just sit up the front while you're doing something. And, while they're doing the work, they'll try to talk or whatever and get into this or that. So they get off task. You do this slow approach type of stuff. And you see when you do this, the kids, they reorient themselves and get back on the work before you even have to say anything, especially when the expectations are set very well. And then when you get over to them, you just look at them for 10, 15 seconds maybe, which feels like a long time in the moment. And I'll talk about that today when we get into arguing. It feels like a moment, but it gets them back on track, and it redirects them on track, and you didn't even have to expend any voice to do it, and this type of thing. And that's what it's all about, is, aborting the adrenaline process and saving your own stress reaction. So be calm. Be calm with the kids. Again, put questions in the chat, comments, likes, shares, and subscribes. Or in the video after you watch, please share it. Please share it with people. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says in his book, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ku anfusukum wa ahlikum naran wa kuduhan nasu wal hijara, which translates into, O you who believe, save yourselves and your family from a fire, the fuel of which is men and stones. And I think we all know this ayah and how important it is to us, and how much it stresses the importance of being effective with our families and keeping them away from the hellfire, the fuel of which is men and stones, which is what the idols usually worship. Men and stones, and we do not want our children there. A hadith that I want us to look into, that I want us to reflect on in today's lesson, with what we're getting into, It was narrated that Anas bin Malik said, may Allah be pleased with him, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever gives up telling lies in support of a false claim, a palace will be built for him in the outskirts of paradise. Whoever gives up arguments when he is in the right, a palace will be built for him in the middle of paradise. And whoever had good behavior, a palace will be built for him in the highest reaches of paradise. So, brothers and sisters, we have to go back to the Quran and the Sunnah to have answers for what to do with our children. And we have to take the advice of the Prophet ﷺ. This is advice people need these days. We all know it. A lot of us need it with our children. It's the Sunnah to leave off arguing. And the hadith is graded Hasan. If that is not good for you, we all know the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ, he said that the strongest person is not the one who is best at fighting. Rather, the strongest person is the one who controls himself when he is angry. And how much does our lack of control in our anger lead to us getting into fights and altercations with people? How damaging it is with our children. Bismillah. You know, with anger too, someone could say to me, well, there are times the Prophet got angry. There's hadith narrations that report that his face turned angry. There's reports of him giving the Juma khutbah and his face turning angry and becoming red. And of course, it's part of the sunnah to deliver the khutbah in a loud voice. Now, brothers and sisters out there, I like a good fiery khutbah just as much as the next brother. If I listen to someone giving a lecture or something online or something like this, personally, I prefer the brothers who bring the tough stuff a little bit more than the ones who are softer. I personally prefer that. I find that inspirational. I find that as a beneficial reminder. That gets my emotions going in a way where my sense of urgency over the deen and over getting into Jannah and avoiding the hellfire and keeping my family away from the hellfire, I find that my sentiment towards that increases with that type of thing. And we have part of that. That is a part of our Islamic learning and our culture as Muslims in practicing our deen is those types of reminders. But we're mistaken if we take the sort of emotion that gives us in something like a Juma khutbah or a lecture being given online to lots of people. You have to talk louder, of course, when you're talking to lots of people. If we take kind of the sentiment that gives us and we try to push it into our kids in our one-on-one relationships or when we're trying to teach them, we're making a big mistake. And we're not exhibiting the character of the Sunnah, of the Prophet ﷺ. And, you know, we know if we reflect on, you know, the story of the Prophet, peace be upon him, before the time of his prophethood, when the tribes of the Quraysh, everyone knows the story of the black stone, they were disputing over what tribe should place the black stone in its place. And they decided the next man to walk through, he will decide for us. And the sense of relief that they had when it was the Prophet ﷺ and how they called him the trustworthy, that is the feeling we want our children to have from us, that when we walk in the room, it's a relief. It's relaxing when we walk in the room. It's someone they can trust when they walk in the room. Another narration that's very well known, the companion Hanzala, may Allah be pleased with him, Abu Bakr walked by him in the street and he was crying. May Allah be pleased with Abu Bakr. And I don't remember it exactly, but he asked him what's wrong, Hanzala? Hanzala expressed that he feared hypocrisy for himself. He said, oh, Hanzala has become a hypocrite. And the companions, they feared hypocrisy for themselves. And we, of course, should fear hypocrisy for ourselves, and we do. What about our children? The things they go through. You think they don't fear hypocrisy for themselves? You don't think that causes them sadness, depression, anxiety, all that stuff? Sure it does. And what did Abu Bakr say when Hanzala said that to him? He said, by Allah, it's the same for me. I feel the same way. And he said, let's take it to the Prophet ﷺ. So they took it to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet reassured Hanzala. So that when they were feeling sad, had fears about their iman or whatever, they were not afraid to bring it to the Prophet ﷺ. We don't want our children to have that fear about us. We can't have our children have that fear about us when they are small or older. And how we treat them when they were small, it's going to have effect on how they end up when we're older. And if we have not been doing the correct thing so far, or, again, if this learning is making you realize errors that you have, it's not too late to turn it around, inshallah. And if it makes you realize errors that your parents have done, don't use it against them, because that is not part of Islam either. But we want to reflect on this. So let's get into this idea of arguing and leaving it off, and let's get into some video breakdown. Give me a moment here. We're going to watch more teachers. We are going to watch more teachers getting mad at kids. Okay, again, brothers and sisters, sorry. There is swearing in this video. This first one we're going to watch. I apologize for that. Now, subhanAllah, you're even going to see the adults swear in this one. Astaghfirullah. And, if you have this habit, you need to drop it. And especially some of you younger people in your 20s or so, the media, you've fed so much of that media, so much of that online culture of casual swearing, and you take it out. And in the West, some people, older people, they want to have, even older people now, they want to have, yeah, what's the big deal or stuff? It is a big deal. It is a big deal. The words are filthy. They are disgusting. You look at the origins of these words and what they mean, how degrading they are to human beings and women especially. And as Muslims, we need to not do those things. So sorry, I don't want to go on a side tangent about swearing. But as we're watching the videos, please, brothers and sisters, especially if you are current with me in the chat, but if you're not, still put it in the chat. If you are watching later, please put it in the comments. To enrich the learning a little bit, there's not a right or wrong answer to this, but while we're watching the videos, I want you to write, chat, comment. Not that question, I'm sorry. What do you notice about the arguing? These are 3 videos we're going to do of child and adult arguing. What do you notice about the arguing? If that question is, you don't feel you can answer that one effectively, you're not sure, don't be insecure about your right. No one even knows who you are in these things on YouTube. But you can write, how does it feel watching these videos? That's another thing you can write. Answer that one if you find that one easier to answer. So let's get into the first video, arguing.
Many times, and you're not even admitting to one time.
I can say it.
A man admits to something and says, yeah.
I did. Multiple times I did.
Okay.
So guess what though?
That's all right. Okay, that's all right. Who said anything was wrong about that? You did. You talk shit more than anybody.
You talk shit.
No, you talk shit more than anybody in here. Anybody.
Can I talk?
Anybody.
I let you talk.
You talk shit more than anybody.
I let you talk. And every time I try to
You talk more than anybody too. We let you talk too much because all you do is talk.
All I do is talk.
That's all you do is talk.
Come on.
Anybody.
Okay, what do you notice? What do you notice about the arguing? Think about it. Think about what they're saying. What do you notice about what they're saying? Put something in the chat. Put something in the comment. I'm just going to play these and then talk about them. We'll go to the next one. Sorry, StreamYard takes a little minute to switch the tabs in. Sharing. Okay, back to our old friend from last time. Our old friend, Mr. Chicken Wings. Okay, we talked about this this body posture. If you find those knuckles or your hands on your hips and your elbows flaring out, remember to put your hands down because you're letting your stress take control of you. You don't want to do this. This is a little later on from what we watched last time in this interaction with this guy and the young man.
Okay, what we have right here is not rocket science. This is not a difficult class. No, it's not. It's really not. It's really not. If you read the book, nobody's going to do it if you don't want to do it. If you don't apply yourself, if you think it's going to jump right out and grab you, and you're going to do it yourself, fine.
You see, the kid's starting to get to the laughing point there in the argument. What do you notice about the arguments? What do you notice? What do you notice? Third one. Of course, these are non-examples. I think it goes without saying. This is not what you want to do. What we're showing here. Okay, and these videos, man, these things, I'm only showing you such a small part of these. These things go on for so long. these things go on for so long, these videos. They carry on and on and on. They're painful to watch, okay?
And we had that conversation before. Now, I told you before, you are not going to disrespect me, and you're not going to show up for your friends. Now, don't try to give me those tears either, because guess what? We can go back out in the hall, and we can see the tears out there. Don't tell me you don't deserve disrespect. Respect is a two-way street. If you want somebody to respect you, you got to respect them. It's a two-way street. And when I'm talking, you don't interrupt me. And don't sit here and say you did not interrupt me, that you did not disrespect me. Everybody in this classroom saw how you was being disrespectful.
And everyone in the classroom saw how you were treating me.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad they did. So that way they know not to play with me. Now, you're talking about disrespect. You need to start. I am talking. This is what you're doing. This is what you're doing. You be quiet. When an adult is speaking, you close your mouth.
Because you're telling me something that
You know what? Okay.
Incredible. Incredible. She's telling her to be quiet and close her mouth. And I can't help but notice her mouth. It's not closed. Not being quiet. Not working. Okay. Jazakumullah khairan to those of you who answered. Not, Sarah says, not beneficial and quite annoying. Yeah. You know, and this generation of kids, they have this word cringe that we use these days. I mean, and, you know, I talked last week about the tension that the kids get in their tear ducts, behind these situations. You heard this lady actually say to her, you heard this lady actually say to the girl, don't give me that crying. It's like, man, astaghfirullah, you know, but this generation, they have this word cringe, you know, they've gotten a lot of this generation. And while there's more written about parenting these days than ever, and, you know, we have all of human history to try and learn from and all that type of stuff in the modern world, you know, people are lazy these days is what it comes down to. A lot of adults are lazy these days. And this is lazy parenting and lazy teaching and lazy mentoring of kids, even though it's all energized because it's operating on those stress reactions. And I think that this generation of kids, they've gotten a lot of this. They've gotten a lot of this, and they have this term cringe, and they're very sensitive to that. I mean, what's it referred to? You know, when your face cringes, that's the tear ducts activating. And the whole fact that they've developed that term and know it casually, it's like a collective coping mechanism amongst them to turn it into something funny. And that's what you see with these situations go. The kids, they need that release, you know, and the way that they will do it is they'll turn it into something funny, and it's the other person who's got to be crazy. Saeed Ahmed, Jazakumullah khairan. He says, first video, the child was actually in a negotiable position to understand, mashallah. It was the teacher trying to egg him on and refuse to de-escalate confrontation. Allahu Akbar, we have some intelligent people along with this. And says, calm tone between the students and teachers. We see in these videos the child actually exhibiting some more calmness at times than the teacher. Actually, in all three of them. The middle one, the boy who's sitting, I'd say the whole way, but in both these first and second ones. And what does the adult do? They keep going. And then the whole thing keeps going. SubhanAllah. First video, he's instigating the situation, definitely. He did not know that. Like I did not know he was doing something too. It's a bit of a side point. I think I pointed it out within the training video of the turn approach. When you have a situation with a kid and you do the calm approach, you want to be facing them very directly with your toes pointing towards them and being square to them. Something that guy was doing, he was to the side like this. I didn't get into this as much this week, so I'm bringing it up. A thing with the body language, when you're turning to the side and kid and trying to address something, it signals non-commitment. And what that signals to a kid is, if I just push a little bit more, they're going to turn away, because they're you know, if you're strained yourself and you're turning, you're just a moment away from turning away completely. You know, sometimes we do the thing, we go into the kid's room and we just we just peek our head through the doorway, you know, like, hey, what are you doing in here? That type of thing. With half our body. No, you want to get in the room. You want to be square to them, because you're just a moment away from flinging away. And same thing with the yelling to the side. You know, even if you're standing in front of them and you have one foot facing away and both feet aren't, you want to be turning total commitment. That's a bit of a side point, but that first video reminds me of that. Mazen says, OMG, the teacher, don't let her talk whatsoever. Saeed says third one is a direct power play. These are all power plays. These are all power struggles. They're all power struggles, and arguing is a power struggle. And when the arguing goes on, it's so clear when you look at it from the outside. You don't realize it if you're in the moment, but it's clear it's the child gaining power and the adult losing it. It might not be, how much power does a child really have to gain? But a lot of, I'll talk in a little bit how they get something out of this. A lot of kids, sometimes they get a rush out of it, and that reinforces it. But the big thing, what Saeed is saying, it was the teacher trying to egg him on. Sister says he's the one instigating the situation, and all of them, not the teacher is instigating it, and we don't even see how it starts. But within it, if you just listen to what's being said in the first one, it's, you haven't done anything in 30 days. In 30 days, I've been working my second one. If you just read the book, it's all about the book. You just tell us to read the book. Nobody's going to do that. The third one, everyone saw how you disrespected me. Everyone saw what you said to me. What are the kids doing here? The only reason they're saying anything at all is because they're just responding to exactly what the adult is telling them. It's like a game of tennis. It's like a game of tennis or, batting practice. The teacher, the adult is throwing up pitches and the kid's just hitting it. The thing is, in these situations, especially when they're younger, especially when they're under 16, 17, it's a little different when your kids get into young adulthood and maybe they come and if you're having these more philosophical types of problems with kids and they come to you with more comprehensive arguments, you still don't want to get into this type of arguing with those kids. You want to turn it into a conversation. But the kids don't come into these things with like full, really well put together arguments and reasons that are written out and that they're going to lay out. All they're doing is reacting to what the adult is saying. So the adult in these situations has to stop giving them something to react to. That is the key to all of this. The teacher, the adult, needs to keep their mouth shut. And I taught you last week how you keep your mouth shut when the kids trigger you. Now I have another training video to go directly into this, starring my middle daughter. I have 3 daughters. May Allah bless them, guide them. And my middle daughter, who is the most likely one that I have to get into this type of thing with myself or her mother. I'm going to show in here, first, this is simulated. So I'm first going to do it wrong with her. I'm first going to do it wrong with her to get her into that frame of argument type of mind. Because this is something you can practice too. Actually, you can practice having an argument with someone and practice the reaction that I'm going to show you. But we first do a, again, it's simulated, but we first do an argument, and then which is a non-example, and then we do the real example in this video. Let's take a look. Sorry.
Nora, I want you to think of like a time where you did something and you maybe did something wrong or selfish.
I'm just trying to get her into the argument frame of mind right here.
Your mom told you to do something different.
For the sake of the simulation.
Defend yourself, and you didn't want to admit that you did something wrong. Can you think of a situation like that that comes? It can be something small and simple.
She's too on the spot. She can't think.
Well,
Putting kids on the spot isn't good either when you're trying to teach them.
I don't know.
Okay. Is there maybe something, a time or something happened with one of your sisters that you thought like that?
Sibling rivalry never fails.
Oh, yeah. The other night,
She remembers something.
when Lena started screaming at me, Mommy got mad at me because I was telling Lena to stop and that she was wrong. But because she was screaming so loud, I had to scream loud too for
Okay.
her to hear me. And then mommy got really mad about that, but that's what I had to do. Or else
She
I
talks a
wouldn't
lot.
Hear myself.
Okay, so you got in
Gets it from
trouble
me.
for yelling at your sister and maybe telling your sister what to do, like bossing her around. Like me.
She was wrong.
What-
She doesn't like to lose arguments either.
Do that, right?
She likes to be right.
So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna tell you to not to stop bossing your sister around. And then you're gonna get defensive, you're gonna defend yourself, and we're gonna argue about it. Okay.
So I'm gonna yell at you.
Well, I mean, you're gonna come back to me trying to say that either you didn't do it or you had a reason to do it. Okay.
Oh
we're gonna
yeah,
argue
yeah,
about it,
yeah,
okay?
yeah. And you're gonna do it so because I was yelling at Lena.
Well, either I'm
Because
gonna,
I know how to yell about that.
She knows how to yell.
either I'm gonna yelling at her, not bossing her around. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Nora, stop bossing your sister around.
Well, she was yelling at me.
No, you were yelling at her.
But I had to yell at her because she was.
Okay, you know what? I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it.
Well, you never listen.
That is not true.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Yes, it
Okay, you know what? You're grounded.
All right, let me know in the chat. Have you seen arguments like this before? Never had an argument like this yourself? And look, notice what this devolves into is what all these arguments are at bottom. Yes, you did. No, I didn't. No, you didn't. Yes, I did. Okay. Yes, he did. No, he didn't. Okay, maybe it's do it. No, I won't. Maybe it's something like that. But it's all just always devolves at essence. It's just this. Yes, you did. No, I didn't. That's what all these arguments devolve into. Thank you. Yep, she was the right one to choose, Sister Purely. Thank you. Good acting. The thing is too. I mean, okay, we're doing a simulation here, but look at her face. Look at this. See what's going on? She's enjoying this, brothers and sisters. And sometimes now, the kids in the real life examples that we saw, I'm not saying that those kids were enjoying it in that moment, but we've seen how these types of situations, like in the classroom context, in the overall context, they devolve into laughter with the kids as a coping mechanism. And over time, as it gets reinforced upon kids, when the kids see that they get reactions out of this, they do think more about how to do it better. And you've had the experience. Parents out there, I know you have had the experience that when you keep arguing with your kids, it only gets more and more and more and more. That is how it always goes. Okay, maybe when they're younger, first time you get tough with them or whatever. Excuse me. Pardon me, excuse me. Maybe when they're younger and you get tough with them, and everyone likes to justify that you're going to be tough with the kids. And a lot of times they'll think that works because when they're younger and you do something tough with them, okay, they react to it and they comply with it because they'll do that when they're younger. But over time, it's like you just got to keep getting tougher and tougher and tougher. And if you get into these arguments with them, the arguments just get bigger and bigger and bigger and louder. And the kids, some of the kids, if they have a prone for this, some of the kids, they will get a rush out of doing it over time. It's not all kids, but certain ones. If they are more argumentative by nature, they will get that way. And they even will start ruminating on what is a more nasty thing I can say or a better comeback I can say last time. I can remember being young, middle school, early high school, and having parents who were more restrictive on me than some of my peers, or at least I thought they were. And my peers tell me, oh, my parents said that. I just tell them this. I just tell them that. And like, oh, I'm going to take that idea that this kid told me and try it with my parents next time or whatever. A lot of, peers, especially, again, the middle school, early high school, late elementary school ages, they will talk about that a lot. Now, nowadays, they won't just talk about that with their peers. They can be on TikTok. And TikTok, punks on TikTok and young adults trying to manipulate them on TikTok. Even sometimes pseudo therapists and psychiatrists on TikTok or counselors, of which there's many, and many who prey on the psychology of adolescents and young people. Because I know so many people are watching it on TikTok. They will give them ideas of how to come back on your parents. So our kids can be consuming that nonstop. So they're going to be, so sometimes kids get very, very good with this and very, very nasty with this. And as you can see, they can even like it to an extent. Now that doesn't mean that they're evil and their souls are corrupt or that they're, unsalvageable or this type of thing. But as I said last time, you have to remember, kids cannot empathize with adults as well as adults can empathize with them. And adults struggle to empathize with kids because the reality is we've gotten distance from our childhood by the time we've had kids, especially when we have kids older, and our own brains have changed enough and we're so busy with life that we forget what it was like to be a kid. It is a good parenting thing to take time to try to reflect on what your childhood was like, even if you feel it is painful. In your long-term memory, you do have memories that are sitting there that if you try to let them come, take quiet moments, you can have that. It's good to try to put yourself in your own child self. That's good. It'll help you empathize with kids. But kids have never even had the experience of being an adult. They don't have any adulthood in their long-term memory. So sometimes when we're going back and forth or stuff, they think this is how it is. And of course, your actions with them are teaching. This is how you resolve problems. This is how this is how you interact with people. And I'll tell you, teaching in school, in a classroom, the kids whose parents deal with them this way. You know it because they deal with other people that way. The parents whose kids hit them and rely on hitting them because they will do it that way. Now, some of that kids do. Sometimes kids will hit each other to a degree where it's just impulsive. They will argue to a degree where it's just impulsive. And a lot of the things that kids do that trigger us, it is things that they just do impulsively. So, again, because understanding that and knowing that has to allow us to not take it personally, which I know is very hard. It's very hard for a teacher when they've planned a lesson and they're trying to accomplish it. But if they don't know how to set the kids right to be able to listen, because kids don't learn anything unless they're set right to learn beforehand. They will get very frustrated with our kids. We have very high emotions from our kids, so it's hard to take it personal. A lot of us, we will formulate in our thinking like, oh, the kid's going to be put in their place or this type of thing, which is a trap when you start thinking that way, especially in these, ages 9 to 15, let's say. Okay, kids get hot with this stuff in those ages. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And again, if it just builds up, if it only builds up through those ages, you're asking for a disaster later in their life. You have to not take it personal. That is the first thing. Middle school teachers, nobody likes teaching middle school. Middle school teachers, as they say, are people who wanted to teach high school and couldn't get a job in a high school. The only way that people survive teaching middle school over time is they learn how to take what the kids do. They learn how to not take what the kids do personally. You have to learn it. That's the first step. That's the mentality that you need to understand. You need to remind yourself. It's the thing to tell yourself when you're doing the exercise from last week. Where you press the tongue to the roof of your mouth, prevent your teeth from being clenched, and breathe out your nostrils and take that relaxing breath and de-stress yourself. Not to take it personal, because you have to be in the right mind to think. Now, what do you do instead of what I did here? What do you do? Instead, let's continue watching the video. Let's continue watching the video to see. And I'll highlight this comment. The sister says, I'm out here 20 learning from this brother. Jazakumullah khairan, sister. I appreciate that. Please share it with your peers. As I've said, a lot of the people I'm talking to, okay, they're older parents who they are watching this stuff, realizing what they did wrong. They want to know what to do now. And we're going to help as best we can, but when things have really gone wrong in that later age of adolescence and early adulthood, when you're in that type of thing, it's playing a long game now, inevitably, which doesn't mean we give up on those people, but the people who benefit from this the most from this are pre-parents, young adults, and people who you just want to work with kids in the masajid. Average people who are around kids there. They're the people who benefit the most with this. So please like, share, subscribe, and all that type of stuff, brothers and sisters. But I especially share. The sister says, hey, brother, can I ask you a question as a Muslim? Go ahead and ask it, brother, and put it in the chat. If I can get to it by the end, if we have time, shall I be more than happy to answer it. Otherwise, put it in the comments later, and I'll come back to it, maybe with a video or contacting you personally. And my personal contact information is in the description box and at the link that I showed you. Okay, well, I'm sorry. Don't want to get sidetracked. What to do? So now here is doing it differently.
Okay, good. Okay, now we're gonna try it again. Okay, I'm gonna start calmer here,
Okay, she doesn't know what I'm going to do. Here.
and I'm gonna start calmer, and we're gonna see how it goes. Okay, you don't know what I'm gonna do this time. We're gonna start calm. 3, 2, 1. Nora, you can't boss your sister around.
Well, she was yelling at me. You're scaring me. You're looking into my eyes.
Nora, I want you to.
Okay, what happened there, brothers and sisters? What did I do? Please, someone put in the chat. What did I do? She tried yelling at me in the beginning. She talked back. I told her to do something, and she talked back. Oh, what did I do? What did I do? What did I do? And some laughing emojis. It takes 10 seconds for the chat to go. Please, someone put in the chat. What did I do when she said, well, she was yelling at me? Saeed, broke the tension. Absolutely. React calmer with silence. Allahu Akbar. I didn't say anything. And of course, I had the calm face. I should redo this where you can see my my face square and calm. Kept calm. Stayed calm. Not argue back. Allahu Akbar. You know, I had the face with the relaxed face that we worked on last week. With the tongue to the roof of the mouth, the teeth not clenched, de-stressed face. Just kept it. I did the tongue thing, yes. So Allahu Akbar. How did she react to it? That's the next thing, brothers and sisters, please. How did she react to it? Yes, just silence. We'll go through the comments here. While yep, you breathed. How did she react, brothers and sisters, when I was just silent? What did she do? What did she do? It's best parents don't get involved in children fight. They make up literally 1 minute later. You know, the thing is, though, if the fights keep going on, sometimes there isn't the makeup, you know, and when there's a tense moment, doing something later is something I'll get to. Okay, good. She stayed quiet and turned around. Very good. Well, I shouldn't say completely quiet. She said something, but she turned around. Yes. She said, you're scaring me, LOL. Yes. Okay, now listen. There's something important from this. Now, like, yes, I have other videos where I've done this type of reaction previously. Okay. Now look, her turning around. Sorry, I'm losing track of the chat here. She got calmer. She got embarrassed, didn't know what to do with the silence, and she was expecting to respond back with the next thing in her head. Her energy changed. Very good. Look, there's really something to here. When a kid does that, they talk back, and you just look at them with this face. Not the villain face with the cringed eyebrows, not that all tense and stuff, just this relaxed, in control face. You know, they might get a little, there is this kind of mix of intimidation, which, you know, that's part of the authority that you have over them. That's part of the natural authority that you have. You're bigger than them. You're older than them. You're wiser than them. You know things that they do not. So yes, they might try, part of it might be wondering, well, what are they going to do next? But so long as the face is relaxed and it's not the villain face of tension, then they're not going to get into this like worst type of scenario type thinking where they'll get very defensive. But you do see like this want to get out of the situation. Okay, she turned around. And the way they will react to that is they'll want to make it right then. So it primes them, this staying still, to want to make the situation right. Now, again, depending on what the situation is, if they're not meeting your expectations, like if they're playing with their brother and sister and they start fighting, and you go and you say, stop fighting or whatever, don't hit each other. You know, if you do the calm approach, a lot of times they will fix themselves before you even get to this. But if they talk back and you just look, you know, they'll often just recorrect themselves. This happens so many times in teaching. Again, when the kids are supposed to be doing work and they do something else, You go, you redirect them. If they don't react, if they don't self-correct with the nonverbals of walking towards them that I taught last week, and you have to give them the direction of what to do. Go back to your seat, and look, depending on the situation, a lot of times you do want to give the directions instead of saying don't do this. You want to give the clear directions of what they should be doing. I'll talk more about what to say next week. I'm not even getting into what to say yet again this week, because all this stuff before you start talking to the kids is so important. Like, the emphasis needs to be on it so big, I'm not even getting into what to say until next week. But you see it all the time in teaching, where if a kid, he gets out of his seat, he's talking to his friend or whatever, you walk over to him and you say, go back to your seats, and they say, oh, well, just take a minute or something like this. And you just give that look, they'll look at you. Maybe they'll say, what? Or maybe they'll say, why are you looking at me? Okay, if they're really defiant, they'll say that. Sometimes they will say, will you please just say something? If they're really trying to hold it out, just hold the face. Just hold the face. Please try this. Just hold the face. Hold it longer than it feels natural. When you're in these moments with these kids and you have to abort the stress reaction and all those emotions are flowing, the waiting can be hard. You'll want to react, especially if they're saying something, but just hold the face. More often than not, they will just go right back to what you want them to do. Okay? You go to the room. Hey, it's time to study your Aqidah class. I don't want to today. Just look at them. What are they going to do? They're not comfortable with you just looking at them. Even if they're on the iPad, they'll want to make that looking end, and it will usually get compliance. Now, they might express some frustration with that compliance and go, oh, or something like that. Just let that go. Okay, that's a temporary outburst that they need to have. Just let it go. If the disrespect really, really bothers you, that's fine, but you're going to deal with that later. And next week, I will get into that aspect. I have a really good video of a very difficult class that I had. I had a class that did not go well, went bad, and I had to go through this and do this, and then decompress with the students later. I will show you that next week, inshallah. Bismillah. But this is what I really want you guys to try. Just this looking for next week. What if they laugh? Look, no matter what they do, just hold the face, okay? If you want to stay in compliance. We'll talk about those different things. Now, the point about laughing, sometimes what they will do cute face, okay? Sometimes they're doing something wrong, and what they have learned throughout their lives with some parents, some teachers, is that if I act cute and I got a little smiley face, that will get me what I want. So then I will butter mom and dad up, and then I can just they'll just go away and say, oh, you're so precious, and I can just go back to what I was doing. You don't want to do that either, okay, if you're holding them accountable. And that maybe goes, get us in a balanced way that maintains authority and respect without damaging the relationship. That's a whole trick too, the smiley face that kids do. So that's a whole other thing, okay, especially if it's teaching. Kids do that in school all the time. Actually, I get that more than I get the talk back from kids. I'll walk over, and I'll get it even before I walk over them. They'll be like goofing around, walking over, and they'll be goofing off or whatever when they're supposed to be working. You walk over to them and they'll try and go like that, like, oh, you see, and they're trying to trigger that the soft side of you. You don't want, if it's a matter of holding them accountable for their actions and redirecting them, you don't want to give into that. You want to just hold the face. Okay. Now, again, I'm going to show a video here where I do this in class. I don't get much talk back in my class because I'm well versed in these things now. But I'm going to show a video where a student, while I'm teaching, a student keeps turning and talking, and you have to be very sensitive to stopping yourself when you do that. I'll talk about that, about how you get kids to listen when you're talking. They do something that's interruptive. But I'm going to show a video here in a moment where I have to, I don't do seating charts with my students. I let them sit wherever they want. But there comes to be some times where if I'm getting so interrupted by them turning and talking to the person next to them, where I will ask them to go to a different seat. Now, when I do that in the video I'm about to show with this student, you can't hear her say anything, but what she did do in real life was she shook her head after I tell her what to do, and I hold the face. Inshallah, you're going to be able to hear the desk, or her you're going to be able to hear her slide her chair out and move her papers around and stuff to move to the different seats. And from this, we will get an idea of how long this can take sometimes.
Instead of
And it's not the most extreme example, actually. Okay, I've had much more extreme examples. But the big thing I want you to try this week, to focus on trying, before we get into what we have to say, if we need to say some of these situations, is just
relying on these
try holding the face.
sort of
action.
fake acts or these superficial acts.
Meaning the autobiography
They,
of Malcolm X.
they at least were actually focused on building things in community. Can you
Okay.
move here or there, please?
Interrupted there.
This
Face.
is at least the 6th time I've had to stop because it's who you're talking. That's disrespectful and rude, and I shouldn't have to do it. Ahlam, move to the seat in front or this one.
Now, okay, first of all, you can tell I'm agitated here. You get agitated easier when you're teaching 20 kids or just talking to one, because you already got to be kind of loud and worked up to be doing effective teaching when you're in the middle of instruction. You can hear me quiet my voice. I'm going to go over all that type of nonverbals when we get into talking stuff about your voice pattern and pausing, this type of thing. You see me do some of that, but you can tell I'm a little agitated and I'm feeling crunched for time. So I gave the command once. I talked about the thing about being rude because they interrupted several times. Then you hear me go to very explicit directions. Okay, not just go to a different seat, but pick your things up and go to this seat specifically. When you feel you need to go verbal with the directions of what exactly you want them to do, if that wasn't the first thing that you said, you want to be very specific, like exactly what you want them to do with their hands and their body or whatever to make it happen. But we're at the, where are we in the video here? Move myself out of this. Okay, we're at the 31-second part of the video. I've given the command. You can see I'm holding the face. She shook her head at me, and I'm just holding the face. That shaking the head, I could go like, you better do this or I'm gonna, you've been so okay, I could go that route. But instead of staying, relaxing myself, holding the face, we're at the 31-second mark. Let's see how long it takes before we hear the slide of the chair noise. Okay, right there, you hear it? 38-second mark. Hear the papers moving, putting them down on the new table.
Thank you.
And she sat down in the new seat. So from the time I gave the command until she acted on it by moving her seat out, took 7 seconds. In the tension of that moment, that 7 seconds felt like a really long time. Usually, naturally, especially when you're operating on your stress reaction, adults want to react in 1 second. No, you have to. This is where you practice patience on the micro level, brothers and sisters. This is where you actually show young people patience. This is where they learn to respect you because of your patient disposition. This is these micro level things. This is where it begins. At the 7-second mark, she backed out, didn't start teaching it, didn't go back to the thing right away once she showed a first motion of compliance. I kept the face, kept looking until the compliance was complete, which took another 13 seconds for her to get to the new chair, put the papers down, sit down. It all took 20 seconds in total of me holding that look. And alhamdulillah, I had enough compliance from the other students that no one else interrupted or interjected or that type of thing. A lot of times when we're only doing this with our kids, we don't have to have that worry, but I did have that worry here. You got to hold that face. I've held it longer than 7 seconds. I've held it. You have to try. This is the big homework thing for you to try. Now, sometimes you're stretched for time. Maybe there's more urgency. There's various factors that's maybe trying to divert the kid's attention from you. Maybe they are really pressing with the verbal. They're more obstinate. They're more defiant, which often is an indication of where the relationship is at, if they're just doing that. And you do have to go verbal again after doing the face. You do have to say something. Sometimes you have to do that. How do you do that? What do you do? What do you don't do? That, brothers and sisters, is what we're going to get into next week. Inshallah. But again, the emphasis on these nonverbal things is so important that I'm spending. I just can't emphasize it enough. There's no emphasizing enough, brothers and sisters. You have to be calm with kids. You have to, and it begins before we even open our mouths with things, and how we approach them. And we have to develop these attitudes. For the brothers out there, you have to understand that whether you are married now with a family or you're hoping for that one day, inshallah, may Allah grant that to you. The extent to which you, brothers, you practice this in your homes and are able to execute it, you will set the standards of what calmness means in your home. No, you cannot expect anyone else in your home to exceed you in setting a calm, respectful tone. If someone else in your home is feeling like they have to do that in spite of you, you have a problem. You have a problem that you need to reflect upon and try to fix, and perhaps apologize to people for. For the sisters out there, you need to give yourself permission to be calm. Please, sisters. Okay, some of the sisters out there, I know, you don't have to be perfect, sisters. And I showed you, like with Ali ibn Miller, the brother last week, you don't have to do all these things perfectly, and you don't have to do everything perfectly. No one's expecting you to be perfect. You have nothing to lose by being calm. Okay, this stress and this, well, I gotta, make this happen or whatever, and running on this stress. You have everything to gain and nothing to lose by just slowing down in the moment, avoiding these stress reactions, and being calm. Okay, next week we will talk about again what to do when you do have to go verbal with this situation, and also talk a little bit about how you decompress from it later. That's what we will get into next week. But again, this week I'm not even going into what to say because of how important this stuff is. Some questions in the chat. Thank you for firing up the chat, brothers and sisters. I appreciate that. Please leave comments if you are in comment. I am going to go through the chat here. Hold on. See if we have any worthwhile questions and comments. Raising Righteous Children. Nice name. Says, what if our child hit us unintentionally? Talking about a 3-year-old boy. How should we react? You should react calmly, exactly like I'm showing you. That a 3-year-old is not hurting you that bad if they do it, especially unintentionally. You're not physically hurt. If they're doing it for attention or they're doing it for some type of reaction, you can't give them a reaction. So just react calm. Don't think anything of it. Sorry, asked, what's the longest time? Man, I had a situation a couple weeks ago. I don't know if it was the longest time I counted, but I had to take my class to the library in the school, my 11th graders, for a guest speaker, which someone else arranged. And field trips and guest speakers and stuff, they are hit or miss with kids. I really don't like when someone else arranges it. Because a lot of times sometimes if the kids aren't interested, they try to. So anyway, there's like a seating area we'll set up to listen to the guest speaker. But you get 2 boys who they want to go off to their place in the library and be like, no, we're going to be cool and chill over here, this type of thing. And then I got to go redirect them to make them listen to the speaker, who I don't even really care if they listen to. But, I had to walk over to them and say, you need to walk over there and sit in the blue seats over there. And no, I'm just gonna sit here, mister. I'm good, that type of thing. And I had to do it with 2 different kids. One of them was much quicker, and one of them, in that moment, he even said to me, like when I was looking at it, "Will you just say something?" Okay, fine. I'm just gonna go over there. Another, it took like 2 or 3 minutes. And part of it, we were just looking at each other. But it worked eventually. That was a situation where I had to say a few things to him. And okay. Boy, that's a really good question. I'm a blind parent. How would you suggest I face my children or address them non-verbally? Sister, I'll try to reach out to some experts to get that. I mean, I can't share in that experience, unfortunately. Something I will say, I did this. It's a different question, but with the niqab on, I taught kids with a mask on a lot this last school year. There are often, there's enough going on just with the eyes with this stuff, with tension reading, that you can do this stuff with the niqab on, especially if they're used to seeing you at home. I know it's not the question the sister's asking. It's a big question. So brother or sister, I'm sorry, I shouldn't assume. I will try to dig into that and get back to that. Do you have advice for dealing with manipulators and self-professed narcissists? Yeah, it's a little too off topic. Oftentimes, the older sibling is expected to be an adult even at a young age. How can this child be motivated into enjoying their childhood? Look, I did a previous video on excuses that parents make. Now, look, again, going back to the traditional society versus the modern society thing and the village approach versus, having to have this individual competition with your kids. We're in a place where we are calling our kids to Islam. Okay, we have to do that. We can't just put them on some sort of track and expect it to work out. This whole trying to put things on the oldest sibling, well, my brothers and sisters, it's a problem in a big situation. And we justify it by saying, through this, we throw the older kid in there. They're going to learn responsibility. And it's going to teach them all this. They might learn to hate. A lot of times they learn to despise us from it because we took so much of their youth away. And they feel like that we expected them to do our job. They're smart enough to know that, especially in the times we're living in. This is a whole other excuse making. Several families I've talked to, it was this thing that caused that kid in particular, the oldest kid, to stray away later in life. Because instead of the parents doing the job themselves, they put it all on that older kid. And that older kid, especially in the modern day adolescents, they still need to be parented themselves. So I'm not really, and look, I'll get into increasing, teaching our kids responsibility and building it up over life. We want our kids to have responsibility, but just throwing them into something where we're saying, here, you do it, and expecting like some apparition is going to make them learn. That's excuse making on our part for us to not do it ourselves, or to go do something that we are interested in doing ourselves, that we think is important for ourselves. And we're putting the job of raising our kids off to someone else. Yes, maid and servant culture can play into that. Hiring too many babysitters can all play into that. And look, we want our kids to have extended families and know their extended family members and stuff. But even things like go live with your grandma for a while, go live with your uncle and aunt for a while, and that type of stuff. While I go to school, or I go work somewhere where I'm not around you. Now, if you some people who are in treacherous situations in life, sometimes they have to do that. So if you have to do that, you want the kid to understand the context in which you have to leave them with someone else, and you still want to stay in contact with them very regularly, which you can. But, I was talking to a parent just the other day, may Allah bless that parent and make things easy for him, who had something go wrong. And part of it was the kids were living with a uncle and grandma for 2 years while the father was working overseas and she was doing a medical degree somewhere else. Okay. Now, maybe you have to do that. Maybe you don't. But, and we like to tell ourselves, okay, in Islam, yes, they're adults when they hit puberty. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala holds them accountable. Doesn't mean that they don't still need to be taught at those ages and guided. They do, especially nowadays. And, we like to tell themselves, well, if we just give them more adult responsibilities, just throw it on them, that's going to make them mature faster. That's not what's happening. That's not what's working. So sorry to go kind of over on that, but this overburdening of the oldest sibling, that type of thing, we shouldn't do this. I'll tell you something too. In the school that I teach, 95% Muslim kids in my school. It's a public school, but 95% Muslim kids. The community I teach, they're not too into doing after school programs. So my school doesn't do too many of those, but we do some of them throughout the year. When we do those, who are the kids who sign up for the after school programs? It's the junior and senior girls who want to avoid having to go home and be the parent for the younger sibling. And they don't care what the after school program is. They just go to it because they want to avoid having to do that. That is always who does that. And at my school, what after school programs are being offered to them at that school, that whole type of thing. But what does that tell you? What does that tell you? That all those kids want to do that. How can I stare at a 3-year-old who starts punching? Well, just stay calm. Okay, just stay calm. There's some question there about what's leading up to the punching, this type of thing. And look, the younger they are, the more impulsive they are. But you still want to stay calm. A 3-year-old can react to this stuff. 3-year-old can react to stuff. Okay, if you've got an email, can you put in the chat, Brother Abraham? That'd be great for specific questions. And my first name is Michael, by the way. My last name is Abraham That's why it's Abraham Education. It's not some kind of perennialist Abrahamic faith type of thing. It's just my last name, and it's not a name I chose. It's my father's last name and my grandfather's last name. It should be in the description box too when the video is done, info@abrahameducation.com. Brothers and sisters, you can also go to abrahameducation.com/parents. I will put the video I showed today up there, the training videos from last week. Please share the videos with people. Put it on your social media platforms. Message it to someone. Please compliment it as you do. That will get people to watch. And you can check out my book, Engaging Muslim Students in Public Schools, on Amazon, please. Refer to educators. We'll talk more about that as we go. Jazakumullahu khair. This is the end, sister. I'm not trying to do 90 minutes today. I'm just trying to do an hour. I had a longer introduction last time, so I don't want to burden the people by going too long. Okay, but next week we will talk about what to do when you have to go verbal with the kids, and you maybe have to up the ante a little bit or this type of thing. That is what. But even with that, there's really important nonverbal things to teach. And that starts to get into how we make kids listen to us. Okay, that's what we'll go into next week. Jazakumullahu khairan. Barakallahu fikum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And I need to say anything good that came from this, or good that I said, comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and is attributable to his ni'mah upon us. May he rectify our affairs, forgive us, and guide us. Anything wrong or evil that I said is from the deficiencies within myself and within my own soul. And I seek repentance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone.